A collision plane accident caused scientist Li He to travel to a castle in a foreign world and become the fourth adopted son of the Countess of Blood. His family is all witches. The eldest sister is strong, the second sister can fly, the third sister can transform, the fifth sister can speak animal language, the sixth sister can control fire, and the seventh sister can penetrate walls. Only he is an ordinary person. In order to decipher this unscientific matter, he created a bunch of technological creations based on his past life memories. At the same time of analysis, the charm of science almost conquered all sisters, except for the Countess. One day, the Countess suddenly disappeared, and the gate of the castle was blasted open. A group of people rushed in holding magic stones, saying they were demon hunters and wanted to hunt witches. Li He put down the test tube, picked up the modified musket and frowned. "Are you serious? This is a story about using scientific analysis of spells. High intelligence, no system." The 3 million word version of The Technology Wizard with the same theme has been completed. Welcome to read. Keywords of the novel. Science Wizard without pop-ups. Download the complete collection of Science Wizard TXT, and read the latest chapters of Science Wizard. Chapter 1. Witchcraft Castle Scientists. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Witchcraft Castle Scientists. Bang. Rumble. The explosion sound of the high-energy particle collider still echoes in my ears, and the image of flames imprinted on the retina has not completely dissipated. Li He, who was knocked to the ground by the impact, struggled up despite his physical pain and quickly issued commands one by one. Turn off external energy immediately. Activate emergency plan number 1. Report the damage situation. Hey. Li He's voice suddenly interrupted, and he looked around and found that for some reason, he was no longer at the explosion site of the high-energy particle collision test base, but rather in a castle room that looked somewhat outdated. This seems to be a medieval-style castle room, all built with blue stones. The window is very small, the room is a bit damp, and there is a faint smell of moss floating in the air. The faint sunlight shone in, making him feel a bit dazed. What exactly is this? Turning his head to look at the copper mirror next to him, his whole body also changed greatly. Like returning to his youth, he transformed into a boy of 14 or 15 years old, sitting on the bed in a loose nightgown. What's going on here? Li He asked aloud, his brain spinning rapidly. Is it a hallucination before death? With the help of his medical knowledge, he quickly made inferences. That hallucinations before death do indeed exist, medically known as near-death experience, NDE, which typically occurs a few minutes or seconds before death. When the human body is on the brink of death, blood pressure drops, breathing slows down, and heartbeat slows down. These physiological changes can cause changes in the internal environment, affect the function of the nervous system, and promote the release of hormones such as endorphins and dopamine, leading to hallucinations such as seeing light and hearing sound. But according to the summary of the medical journal The Lancet, the hallucinations of end-of-life experiences are generally life reviews, soul exits, seeing white light tunnels, seeing gods, etc., not like he is now. I won't be so clear, let alone have an incredibly clear consciousness. What the hell is going on? Is it because of pre-death brain hypoxia, which leads to brain damage and produces hallucinations that are even stronger than the end-of-life experience? Or is the theory of celestial projection true that after the death of the human body, the celestial self, soul, will detach from the body and travel to other dimensions? It can't be a time travel in a novel, to a magical world, right? First of all, eliminate the most obvious erroneous option. Time travel. This unscientific thing will definitely not happen, otherwise all the scientific systems he currently possesses could be almost overturned. So while pondering, Li He suddenly heard footsteps coming from outside the door. A little girl appeared outside the door. She looks about 8 or 9 years old, with long eyelashes and big eyes. She is wearing a milky white lace long dress, and her face is as tender as a porcelain doll. The other person stopped at the door with a worried expression, slightly tilted their head to look at the door. The next moment, they saw that Li He had already stood up from the bed, and their eyes widened instantly. With a surprised and happy expression on his face, he quickly ran in and grabbed Li He's arm, opening his mouth and making a sound. Then Li He listened and the other person said urgently and quickly, at hashtag UN% at hashtag dot. Li He hesitated slightly. The other party was also taken aback, but later realized that they were speaking too quickly and Li He didn't hear clearly. Taking a deep breath and smiling happily, he said, at hashtag UN% at hashtag dot. Li He, dot. Girl. Dot. After a silent gaze, Li He confirmed something that the other person was speaking a completely unfamiliar language, different from any language he knew. It is not one of the 5 international languages, nor is it a niche artificial language like Esperanto or Edo. It sounds a bit like English in pronunciation, but the syllables and rhythms are more like Spanish. A wonderful language. Li He judged it based on his mastery of linguistic knowledge. %amp, %UN hashtag UN% dot. Seeing that Li He remained silent, the little girl spoke again. Li He remained silent. The little girl visibly became anxious, and in the next moment, she said, %UN at, and turned her head and ran towards the outside. I don't know if I was too anxious, but I didn't even check where the door was and ran straight into a nearby wall. Be careful. Li He spoke out and instinctively reached out to pull. But the little girl was faster, and in the blink of an eye, she arrived at the castle wall made of bluestone. Then, under Li He's gaze, her whole body melted inch by inch into the wall and disappeared. Wall-piercing technique. Li He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Walk to the wall where the little girl disappeared, observe for a long time, and then return to the bed to sit down. Squint your eyes and tighten your lips. After a while, he spoke up, so this is the first option to rule out. Is this crossing into a magical world? Interesting. Very interesting. In the blink of an eye, 6 months later. In half a year, Li He learned the language of this world and clarified some things. For example, this is a world similar to the Middle Ages, but different from Earth, where there are spells and wizards. Half a year ago, he traveled across the country and became the 4th adopted son of the bloody Countess of Blackstone Castle. Lich Gale Grey. The Countess of Blood has a total of 7 adopted children. Apart from him being an ordinary person, the other 6, along with the Countess of Blood, possess magical powers and are all wizards, to be more precise, witches. The little girl in a white dress that he saw earlier was his nominal 7th sister, Weir, with the ability to penetrate walls and heal. In addition, the 6th sister Fair can control fire, the 5th sister can speak animal language, the 3rd sister. The 2nd sister. The eldest sister, the most powerful, is naturally the Countess of Blood. No one has seen her take action, but according to rumors, her strength is enough to destroy a small town. Faced with all of this, Li He, who had traveled through time, was initially surprised. Afterwards, I developed a strong interest in exploring the reasons behind the existence of supernatural spells, what kind of existence wizards are, and what about time travel. Spells, wizards, and time travel may seem unscientific, but as a scientist, Li He is well aware that what he calls unscientific is simply because he knows too little. Even the most unscientific things have logical principles behind them, and their purpose is to thoroughly study them in a scientific way. This is much more interesting than conducting research step by step on Earth, and it may create a whole new field of science. In the field of wizard magic science. Just think about it and get excited. However, on the other hand, it is not easy to figure out all of this. Lack of instruments, assistance, resources. Everything has to start from scratch, and the research progress is very slow. Occasionally, it is also influenced by the six sisters and the Countess, and the progress is comparable to a snail. However, with the help of scientific thinking, research is constantly advancing. With the power of science, his mastery is also increasing day by day. Blackstone Castle. On the open space inside the castle, there is a newly built stone house. Inside the stone house, Li He, who had traveled for 6 months, sat in front of a somewhat simple metal operating platform. On the operating table, there are various types of parts, some are round tubes, some are snap springs, and there are also various irregular metal parts. Li He reached out and picked up the round tube first. It can be seen that the circular tube is over 40 centimeters long, and its inner diameter is not smooth, but has multiple rotating and twisted raised thin lines. This is rifling. The true name of a barrel is the barrel. Holding the barrel in hand and observing for a moment, Li He reached out and picked up the ruler base, ruler gap sight door, ruler vernier, vernier lock button, vernier clamp spring, ruler sight door spring, upper guard wood lock and other miscellaneous components, and quickly assembled them. Quickly, a complete barrel assembly was completed. Li He didn't stop, calmed down, and quickly assembled internal components such as the gun mechanism and firing pin outside the stone house, in the corner of the Blackstone Castle. 2 8- or 9-year-old girls are swinging. One of the little girls, dressed in a red long dress, with red hair, kept swinging high and falling at high speed on the swing, slightly pursed her mouth, fearless and lively beyond her age. It was Li He's sixth sister, Fei. Another little girl, wearing a milky white lace skirt and gently swinging on the swing, was much quieter. She was Li He's seventh sister, Wei. Fei was swinging on the swing while proposing boredly, "Wei, let's go play with Li He. Go find Li He to play." No, Violet shook her head vigorously and refused. "You're not going to go find Li He to play. It's obvious that you're going to cause trouble. Li He said he has something to do this morning, so don't let us disturb him. Let's not go." "Humph, silly Wei, why are you so obedient? Li He must be saying this, there must be some secret hidden from us to discover. He won't let us go, we have to go and take a look. Fei, you better listen to Li He's words, otherwise he won't be happy and he will spank you again. Maybe he will continue to draw your blood for some research." "Humph, cowardly Wei. I'm not afraid of it. Li He's not a wizard, even though he looks taller than me, he can't beat me at all. As long as he doesn't drink those strange potions or use those messy weapons." "Are you sure? Last time?" "Don't talk about last time." Fei opened her mouth and revealed her 2 tiger teeth angrily. "Last time was an accident. Who knew my flame spell wouldn't work well when it was sprayed with that strange powder? It must have been a special spell material requested by Li He from the Count to restrain me." "No," Li He said, "it's called dry powder. It's made of phosphorus, acid, ammonia, and water that can put out fires. He also said that if you continue to cause trouble, you will definitely use dry powder to spray you and then spank your butt." "Humph, the more I say that, the more I'm not afraid. Anyway, I'll make a reservation today. It's a big deal. I'll sneak a peek outside the window and just don't go in. Are you going or not? Did I go by myself? I really went there. You." End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Magic Spell Rifle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Magic Spell Rifle Blackstone Castle, inside the stone house. Li He has assembled all the components on the metal operating table. Afterwards, assemble the components together in order. Kaka. Kaka. With a crisp metallic sound, a rifle that didn't belong to this world appeared in front of Li He. The appearance is somewhat similar to the Mauser rifle, also known as the 98K, but multiple parts such as the magazine and firing pin have been optimized, and the barrel has also been specially treated to ensure that it can fire some special bullets. The entire rifle presented a deep black paint, and it was heavy when held in hand. Li He grabbed the rifle, pulled the bolt with a click, carefully checked it, and confirmed that the gun had achieved the expected effect. He nodded in satisfaction. This is not the first gun he made in this world, but it is currently the highest level of production. Although he had not yet designed the airway components, he could only produce manual rifles instead of more advanced automatic rifles. In contrast, firepower lacks sustainability, but its advantage lies in its simple structure, better shooting reliability, higher shooting accuracy, and more convenient disassembly, maintenance, and upkeep. More importantly, this gun has been specially modified by him to allow for a certain degree of use of so-called magical power. In other words, this is a magic-modified spell rifle. This means that as an ordinary person, he can also borrow some props and make initial use of magical power. Of course, this is just the beginning. This is only the beginning. In the future he will analyze and master more powerful forces. Let's call you, ambitious, Li He whispered, giving the magic-modified rifle in his hand a name. Holding ambition in his hand, he pondered finding a place to test his power. Perhaps it would be better to create a simple target for detection. Li He had just thought of this when he suddenly heard a sound outside the window. Turning my head, I saw two small heads peeking in stealthily. "Where, Fair?" She raised her eyebrows lightly and spoke out, "You two come in." Two small heads quickly retracted, and a faint sound drifted in. "Bad guy Fair, I can't say it. Look, I've been caught." "What are you afraid of, silly Violet? Can he still be more terrifying than the Count?" "Humph, let's go in." With a creaking sound, Fair and Weir walked in one by one. Weir shrank her neck slightly, looking scared. In contrast, Fair held her head and chest high, as if she were a victorious little rooster, not at all guilty of being caught peeping. "Just come in, what are you asking us to do?" Fair shouted. "Didn't I tell you that you shouldn't come over this morning if you're busy with something important?" Li He frowned slightly and earnestly educated, "You two are not unaware that there are many dangerous things here. In case of an accident, I don't know the serious consequences." Li He, "I'm sorry." Weir weakly apologized. "I'm not afraid," Fair said with a nonchalant expression. "No matter how dangerous it is here, how dangerous is it? Forgot the last time you touched my shaker and got your arm broken." Li He said seriously. That was just an accident." Faye retorted, "Things happen too quickly, I didn't have time to use magic to protect myself. Besides, can't everything be so dangerous? Actually, what I just made is more dangerous than a shaker," Li He said with ambition as he raised the newly completed magic-modified rifle in his hand. "More dangerous? How dangerous is it?" Faye didn't believe it at all. "The danger is more than tens of times greater," Li He said. "Let me put it this way, if this thing hits you, you will die. What if you didn't die? That will definitely be very painful, beyond your imagination." "Really?" Faye pouted, "I don't believe it, it must be a lie." "What, you want to give it a try?" Li He looked straight into Faye's eyes. Weir was afraid of agreeing and quickly tugged at Faye's skirt. Faye, without any fear, paused word by word and said firmly, "Give it a try. If you can hurt me, I promise not to cause trouble for you for the next half-month. But if you can't hurt me, I'll report it to the Count." Li He pursed his mouth and thought to himself. If the other party insists, it's not impossible. There's no need to hurt the other person, but you can scare them and make them remember more. In addition, you can also test the effect of ambition when facing spell power. He looked at Faye and raised his eyebrows, asking, "Are you sure?" "Of course it's certain," Faye answered without any hesitation. "Okay, you just stand there for testing," Li He pondered for a few seconds, pointing to the side and making a sound at Faye. "That is a corner, with instruments and other items piled up everywhere in the room, except for the empty corner. The ground appears slightly burnt black, with traces of flame combustion and acid corrosion, and is uneven. This is the area specifically used by Li He to test the power of some weapons and unstable instruments. The walls on both sides have been deliberately thickened at the construction site to ensure that the safety of the room will not be damaged by accidents. Feyre didn't think so much at all. She stood over boldly and looked at Li He with some provocation, urging, "Hurry up." "Okay," Li He said, carrying his rifle to the side, opened a metal drawer, and pulled out a slender brass-colored bullet. Click. With a crisp sound, the bullet was loaded into the rifle magazine. Brush. Li He picked up his rifle and aimed it at Feyre, with a serious expression on his face. Feyre felt the pressure and no longer had an indifferent expression on her face. Her small face gradually tightened and she clenched her fists. Hoo. Taking a deep breath, Feyre's chest bulged high and fell again, followed by a layer of crimson flames rapidly rising from the soles of her feet, covering the entire surface of the person. At this moment, Feyre turned into fire. This is Feyre's magical power as a witch. She can ignite specific objects with fire or cover her whole body for protection. Li He looked at the flames on the surface of Feyre's body, his eyes flickering slightly. "Even though it has been half a year since I traveled to this world, and even though I have become familiar with everything around me, I still feel a bit amazed." Spell. A completely contrary existence to his previous scientific theories is truly amazing. Although he has gained some understanding of the principle of this so-called spell through research and applied it in practice, there is still a long way to go before fully analyzing it. However, one day he will succeed. At that time, he will condense this mysterious spell into the simplest formula. Thinking in my heart, there was no hesitation in my hands. Holding ambition, he aimed at Feyre and pulled the trigger. Bang! Gunfire. The bullet flew out at high speed, almost in the blink of an eye, and arrived in front of Duffy. Generally speaking, if it is a normal person, they will be instantly pierced by bullets. But Feyre is not a normal person. She is a witch who can control flames. When the bullet touched the flames of her body, its speed suddenly slowed down, as if hitting a tangible hard wall, moving forward at an extremely slow speed. During the process, under the scorching flames, the bullet rapidly heats up, first turning into a light red color, and then a dazzling orange-red color. Pop. With the last sound, the entire warhead burst unstoppably. Hiss. Immediately, the fragments of the warhead melted into a liquid metal at high temperatures and fell to the ground to cool and solidify, becoming unsightly black spots due to being contaminated with dust. Shula. Almost at the same time, the flames dissipated, revealing Feyre's figure in the flames. At this moment, Feyre was slightly panting, her face turned a little red, and her bangs showed signs of being soaked in sweat. It seems that the attack to catch this bullet is not easy. However, it was also caught. This clearly gave Feyre the capital to be proud of. Humph. Feyre gasped and looked at Li He, pouting, "Isn't there any danger?" "I'm not doing anything." "Humph, Li He, you were just lying to me, right?" "Li He, you're a big scammer." "Haha." Li He chuckled lightly, completely lifeless, and reached out to retrieve a bullet from the nearby metal drawer. The bullets are equally thin and long, but compared to before, the shell color is no longer brass, but presents a dangerous black color, and the bullet head is even darker like ink, with a surface carved with strange patterns that seem to devour souls. I couldn't help but tremble in my heart after watching it. Click. With a crisp sound, Li He once again pressed the bullet into the magazine, loaded it, and slowly made a sound. "I used regular bullets just now to estimate your defense ability, but now I am using the standard bullets of this gun. This time, I guarantee that the power is completely beyond what we can compare just now. Do you want to give it a try?" Li He asked. "Feyre, don't do it," Feyre advised anxiously. "Just try." Feier's temper rose and she didn't listen at all. "Okay, Lee," he said, pulling the trigger. Bang! At the next moment, gunshots rang out. End of this chapter. 3, Chapter 3 Discontinued Research. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Discontinued Research. Bang! The explosive sound came from within the magic-modified rifle, Ambition. The internal firing pin component successfully hit the primer of the black bullet. Under the impact, the primer made of nitric acid and mercury, a trace amount of mercuric acid, exploded. The flames generated by the explosion enter the cartridge case along the ignition hole. Inside the shell, there is a full 2 milliliters of cellulose nitrate, which is prepared by immersing cotton fiber and wood pulp into a mixture of concentrated nitric acid and concentrated sulfuric acid. Under the action of flames, cellulose nitrate produces a larger-scale explosion, generating a large amount of high-temperature and high-pressure gas in a very short period of time. The gas rapidly expands, causing the shell and warhead to separate. The shell is pushed out of the barrel, while the bullet rapidly moves forward and enters the barrel. The spiral-raised rifling inside the barrel plays a role, causing the bullet to rotate while moving forward along the barrel. The special coating inside the barrel of the gun is stimulated by high temperature and begins to shine, releasing an orange-yellow light that shines on the black bullet. The warhead faded from its original color and turned into a crimson hue. Due to pulling the trigger, the muzzle of the gun moved up slightly, and in the end, the crimson bullet spun out of the muzzle, like a blood beam, creating an almost imperceptible diagonal upward arc and flying rapidly towards the target. 3% of a second later, the bullet reached Duffy. Feier is raising flames again, protecting her body tightly. At the next moment, the bullet hit the flames. Wow! The last time an invisible flame could block bullets like a tangible and sturdy wall, but this time it suddenly turns into fragile glass. With a crisp sound, the flames instantly dissipated, creating a fist-sized hole. The bullet penetrated the flame defense through the hole, drove straight in, and then quickly passed over Phil's right shoulder. Feier was not injured, but the scorching bullet still made a small tuft of her hair curl up. The vibrating airflow generated during the flight penetrated deep into her ears and hit her eardrums, causing Feier to feel a buzzing roar of the entire world. Coupled with the shock of the flame defense being instantly shattered, Feier's brain went blank. The bullet passed by Feier and disappeared into the deliberately thickened bluestone wall. Feier stood in place with her eyes wide open and a surprised expression on her face. She looked at the dissipated flame defense, then at Li He, somewhat stunned, and her gaze somewhat bewildered. "Feier!" Weier shouted beside her, somewhat afraid that Feier might have an accident. Li He waved his hand to Weier to appease her, saying there was no need to worry. He knew that Feier was at most startled and wouldn't have any problems. Speaking of which, based on the results of the ordinary bullet shooting just now, he had some expectations for this result. Special bullets can indeed destroy spell defense and effectively deal with targets with spell power. However, on the other hand, after the bullet pierced Feier's spell defense, it was able to fully penetrate the wall, with a slightly greater penetration power. The actual damage caused was not maximized, and if it were to deal with the enemy, its power may not be enough. Perhaps it is possible to consider modifying the warhead, reducing its strength, and creating an expanding ammunition effect similar to that of a dam. But this has a drawback, which is that it may affect the stability of the bullet's trajectory. Perhaps we could try adding a cavity at the tip of the bullet to create a rolling type of ammunition. Li He thought. This way, when the bullet enters the enemy's body, the tip will deform due to its low strength, causing the bullet's center of gravity to shift, inducing instability in rolling, thereby increasing the resistance of the bullet as it moves forward in the human body and fully releasing kinetic energy. In this way, bullets will not penetrate the enemy's body and only cause penetrating injuries. If they hit the torso, they can cause a fist-sized wound on the front and a basin-sized wound on the back. Even hitting the shoulder or limbs can cause serious injuries. However, the material processing is slightly difficult, and relying solely on manual production is too time-consuming. You can think of a way to deceive Feyre and use the opponent's flame spell ability to make. Just like before. Thinking of this, Leahy looked at Feyre. At this moment, Feyre widened her eyes and stood there dumbfounded, clearly not regaining her senses. Leahy couldn't help but shake his head and walked over to Feyre's side, rubbing his head. Feyre, who was stunned, woke up like a startled rabbit jumping in place and looked at Leahy with some fear, saying, "You. What means did you use just now? Why can't I stop it at all? I have a feeling that if you hit me, it would really hurt and hurt. I've said before, if you hit, you'll either die or it'll hurt beyond your imagination. Just now, I controlled it and intentionally hit you off the side, otherwise if I really hit you, even if there's Weyr who can treat you, it's enough to make you suffer." Leahy spoke out and took the opportunity to educate, "So next time you come to my place to cause trouble, think carefully and let's talk." Feyre pouted and said, "It's not a big deal. I just need to pay attention a little bit. Not all the equipment is so dangerous, right? But why is that so? The first time you hit me with this iron stick, it was clearly okay. Because the first time I used regular bullets, the second time I used special bullets. What's special about it? Why isn't my spell working again? You didn't spray the same dry powder as before this time. What kind of powder?" Leahy chuckled lightly and said, "Of course it's not dry powder anymore, it's a drop of your blood." "My blood?" Feyre was surprised. "Feyre's blood." Weyr couldn't figure it out for a moment. "I remember when you caused trouble before, I punished you and drew your blood for research. Leahy explained, I extracted the blood and extracted a substance that was different from normal blood, temporarily named Witcher's blood. Melt a drop of Witcher's blood into the bullet and activate it in a specific way. The released energy can easily break through the flame protection you create and harm your body. In fact, the true principle is much more complex, involving dozens of biochemical reactions and metal-making processes. Leahy knew that Weyr and Feyre wouldn't understand, so he decided to keep it simple. Even so, the two were still confused. After a while, Feyre said vaguely, "So, I was defeated by a drop of my blood. I can't beat a drop of my blood alone. That's because you haven't fully controlled your power yet. When you grow up and become more powerful, it will be different. So, if I had become as big as you, or even as big as Third Sister, wouldn't I have been defeated by a drop of blood?" Leahy nodded. At that time, at least 2 drops of blood were needed. Feyre. At this moment, Leahy glanced at the metal drawer next to him that had previously been opened by him. Inside were rows of neatly arranged bullets, with each row of bullet heads becoming darker and darker in color. The innermost row presents an extreme black color, with each bullet in that row fused with 5 drops of wizard blood. Upon hearing Leahy's words, Feyre was clearly somewhat taken aback. She looked at Leahy and said with a mournful expression, "According to you, even if you're not a wizard, it's hard for me to beat you. So, it's better for you to be obedient and avoid suffering yourself," Leahy said. "By the way, considering that you didn't listen and tried to cause trouble today, although it was not successful, I will still punish you for doing some work. In a few days, use your flame spell power to process some parts for me." "Ah!" Feyre screamed out in agony. Weyr covered her mouth and secretly laughed beside her. In the blink of an eye, night has arrived. The entire Blackstone castle fell silent, the lights in the rooms went out one by one, and the owners of the rooms fell asleep one after another. However, in the stone house in the open space of the castle, the room named Laboratory 0 by Leahy was brightly lit, and Leahy was busy inside. If daytime time is used for experimentation and exploration, nighttime is used for thinking, analyzing, and organizing. Leahy sat at a wooden table with papyrus paper on it. He was holding a goose feather pen, dipping it in ink and writing quickly. Sha sha sha. Through tests 103, 104, and 105, it can be determined that the bullet of Witcher's blood can function stably, but its principle needs to be further explored. Whether it neutralizes the spell effect causing the spell to fail, or destroys the stability of the spell causing the spell to fail, further testing is needed. In addition, the purification process of Witch's blood needs to be further optimized to find ways to increase the production rate. In the later stage of acid hydrolysis reaction, the semi-finished product of Witch's blood shows high sensitivity to pH value, and cannot undergo subsequent reactions above 1.4 or below 1.6. Can the reactants be adjusted to improve in addition? Sha sha sha. After writing for a long time, Leahy finally put down his quill pen, browsed through it, determined the next research direction, and put aside the papyrus paper filled with words. Simply put, his current research has two main directions. One is to explore the principles of spells mastered by Weyer, Fayer, and others, what rules they follow, what advantages and disadvantages they have, and what are their fundamental properties. Another aspect is how to incorporate spells into the field of science, and how to use scientific methods to analyze and utilize them. In other words, he wants to figure out what the so-called magical power of a wizard is, and how as an ordinary person, he can control this power. Of course, besides that, he also has many other things to explore. For example, the owner of Blackstone Castle, Countess Bloody. Elizabeth Grey, adopted 7 children, all of whom were witches. Why is it that he is the only ordinary person without any magical power? Is there any special reason? For example, apart from her daily family dinner, the Countess of Blood hardly ever appears or communicates with the outside world, and even prohibits them from leaving at will. The entire Blackstone Castle is in a semi-closed state, and why? What is it to guard against, or what is it to hide? For example, half a year ago, he, who had always been weak, sickly, isolated, and indifferent, suddenly fell into a coma. Later, he woke up, lost his speech for a long time, and then his behavior became strange. He began to conduct various bizarre research. The 6 sisters expressed surprise, but the Countess never expressed any opinion. Did you not care? Or is it okay? There are too many doubts to answer, but there are too few clues, so we can only patiently search for answers. Patience is necessary. Leahy said in his heart. Time is too precious, and I can't find the answer at the moment, so I can only focus on other things for now. He reached out and took out a thick stack of papyrus from the table, filled with numbers. 193 pounds of grain, 238 pounds of grain, 234 pounds of grain. 12 pounds of sugar. 47 pounds of iron. 67 copper coins of taxes. 1 silver coin and 32 copper coins of taxes. Taxes. This is the account of Blackstone Castle's collection of supplies and taxes from surrounding territories. Originally, it was the responsibility of the elder sister Fiona, who was the assistant of the Countess and the steward of the entire castle. However, later he found a way to come over and be responsible for statistics and organization, saving Fiona's energy. Correspondingly, he could apply for some unimportant materials for research. For Fiona, calculating these accounts can be quite cumbersome, but for him, using a simple formula can help clarify them. Sha sha sha. The goose-feather pen nib brushed over the papyrus paper, and in no time, all the data was sorted out. Taking a light breath, Leahy secretly calculated to himself, tomorrow we need to find a way to apply for some more iron blocks to use. In addition, there are not many chemical reagents left, so we need to supplement some. This requires salt blocks, sulfur, lime. I hope Fiona can feel better soon. The next day, in a blink of an eye, Leahy found his elder sister Fiona with a list of application materials. Fiona was really carefree this time, beyond imagination. But it's not a promise, it's a refusal. I can't give you all the things you want. 4. Also, Prepare to demolish the stone house you built and dispose of the contents inside. Starting tonight, you must sleep in a room in the castle and not appear elsewhere. Leahy remained silent for a long time before speaking out. Fiona, I need a reason. There's no reason, because. Fiona paused and replied, that's what the Count meant. Leahy's eyes narrowed instantly and said, Your Highness, Count. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. The Denial of the Countess. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 5. Experimental Verification of Cognition. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Experimental Verification of Cognition. The Count looked at the youngest Weir and asked in a voice, Weir, how does the enchanting fish taste? Weir looked at the remaining fish head in the bowl and stuttered, It tastes pink and tender, quite delicious, but I dare not eat the fish head. The Count frowned slightly, but didn't say much. He looked at Feir, who was almost the same age as Weir, and said, Feir, what do you think? Feir had already eaten the whole fish without any fear, even holding a spoon and drinking the soup from the bowl almost dry. Upon hearing the Count's question, he replied, It's delicious. It's even more delicious than the fish I've eaten before. I like it. That's good, the Count nodded lightly. By the way, Feir thought of something and reached into Weir's bowl with a spoon, scooping up the remaining fish head and putting it directly into her mouth. She swallowed it in one gulp and continued to the Count, Weir dare not eat it, I'll help her eat it. As you said, waste is not a good habit. Count. Silence for a few seconds, then turn your head and look to the side. However, without questioning Hill, he skipped Hill and turned his gaze directly to Leahy. Leahy, what do you think of the taste of the enchanting fish? The Count asked, his voice unconsciously becoming more serious. Leahy's eyes flickered slightly, knowing that something was happening. He slowly put down the spoon in his hand and looked at the Count to answer, The taste is very good, I really like it. If you like it, that's good. The Countess nodded and then suddenly changed her tone, asking, During the day, I asked Fiona to inform you that you were planning to demolish the stone house. You should know now, don't you have any objections? Leahy blinked his eyes, almost at the same time, feeling multiple glances from his sisters falling on him, all with the intention of persuasion. Not to argue with the Countess. Leahy lowered his eyebrows and eyes for several seconds without speaking. Just when everyone thought he had agreed, he suddenly looked up at the Count and said, Actually, I have a small opinion. If possible, I want to keep the stone house from being demolished. The whole room remained silent until even the occasional collision of utensils disappeared, and several sisters coincidentally stopped their dining activities. The air is somewhat solidified. Oh. The Countess raised her eyebrows and carefully looked at Leahy before asking, Don't want to demolish it. What's the reason? It's quite important to me, and the things inside can help me with some research. What is being studied? Some curious things. Curious things. Have you ever thought that sometimes you are too curious, especially in the past 6 months? The Countess's tone slightly increased. You are a good child, but being too curious is not good, and it is easy to take a detour. I don't know what you're pursuing, but if you want to pursue the same strength as your sisters, I can definitely give it to you, even stronger than them. In a sense, your sister only possesses wizard apprentice level power, while I can give you wizard level power. The premise is that you must be obedient and not think recklessly, because it is very dangerous and easy to go astray. If that's the case, how can I give you my strength and retrieve it? Do you understand? I understand, but... Leahy nodded and paused, but what I am pursuing is not the same strength as my sister. So what do you want to pursue? I want to pursue the mystery behind power more than power itself, Leahy said. To be precise, it is to trace the source of power, explore the composition of power, and understand the mechanism of power. he added in his mind. Oh, the Countess stretched out her voice and chuckled softly, the mystery behind power. Do you want to pursue this? I have to say, this is a very courageous, even bold idea. The Countess's voice gradually sank and became serious. Your ideas are very good, but they are too naive and even foolish. The world of wizards is a dark forest full of mystery and danger, even a leaf of the forest. A wizard may not be able to study it thoroughly for a lifetime, but you want to explore the deepest secrets of the forest. Is this possible? Have you really thought about the difficulty of reaching the end of this road? With your personal abilities, can you really succeed? Why succeed? Even if you succeed, what methods do you use to verify that everything you pursue is correct? Just like a wild beast in the forest, trying to catch the reflection of the moon in the lake, even if it drowns, it only ends up catching a ball of water. I know this road is difficult, it's hard to come to an end, and even has no end. However, by taking one step forward, there is always a reward. As for how to verify the correctness of one's pursuit, I think it can be verified through practice. Obtaining knowledge from practice and then verifying it through practice is my method. Scientific knowledge may be overturned and updated due to external changes, such as from classical mechanics to quantum mechanics. But scientific cognitive thinking is applicable to any place and any time. Practice leads to true knowledge, in Leahy's view, is always the most correct way to understand and comprehend the world. The Countess fell into silence, as if seriously contemplating Leahy's words, and as if controlling her emotions. After a long time, the Countess let out a sigh and spoke out. You seem very firm. I just think I'm right. Interesting. The Countess looked straight at Leahy. If you really think you're right, then I can give you a chance to prove it. If you succeed, I won't stop you from doing anything, and even fully support you. But if you fail, you'll have to bear the corresponding cost. A very serious cost. It sounds like a test. You can think so. When will it start? Don't worry, be patient for a moment, you'll soon know. Before that, just be mentally prepared. Just remind you, this test is big, so be mentally prepared. I understand. Alright, that's all for dinner. Once you've finished eating, let's go. The Countess waved her hand gently to all the people. Weir, Fayer, and the others nodded and quickly got up and left the banquet, walking towards the outside of the restaurant as if facing amnesty. Leahy bid farewell to the Countess, followed behind, and also walked outward. Walking to the door, he stopped slightly and turned his head to look at the Countess again. Do you have anything else to say? The Countess asked, raising her eyebrows. Don't tell me, you've changed your mind, it will disappoint me. No. Leahy shook his head and spoke calmly, I just thought the enchanting fish I ate today was very interesting. If possible, I would like to have another live enchanting fish. What are you doing? Conduct research. The Countess remained silent for 2 seconds and said, You will get it. However, your persistence has made me start to look forward to your performance in the test. I hope I won't disappoint you. Hope. Please comment, collect, and support. 2 shifts a day, 1 chapter at 11 o'clock and 1 chapter at 18 o'clock. Don't keep books, keep up with updates in a timely manner, provide more feedback, and make me more motivated. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Pre-test research. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Pre-test research. Time passed by and we arrived at the afternoon of the next day. In the stone house on the open ground of Blackstone Castle, Leahy is busy. The specific busy task is to carefully extract blood from the recently acquired enchanted fish's body. After a while, the extraction was over. Leahy carefully placed the slightly weak soul fish into a set water tank, and walked towards the nearby experimental table with the extracted small half-tube of blue blood, ready to study. To be honest, after receiving the enchanting fish, Leahy's first thought was to dissect it directly, comprehensively analyze its internal structure, and then try to study the secret of blue blood again. However, considering that after dissection, there is only one opportunity for research, Fiona, the elder sister who sent the enchanting fish, clearly stated that it is the only remaining one. To be cautious, it is better to conduct live research first. It's not too late to conduct dissection after some research results are obtained. I hope that the enchanting fish can cooperate with him and live a few more days with tenacity. Thinking in his heart, he walked to the experimental table with the blood of the enchanting fish and poured it into a conical bottle. The conical flask does not exist alone, and there is a row of densely packed reaction containers next to it. These containers contain various liquids, some are light red, some are yellow-green, and some are colorless and transparent. The containers are connected to each other using glass or leather tubes that are the thickness of a little finger, and finally connected to a conical flask. This is a complete reaction device. As the mesmerizing fish's blood poured into the conical flask, the reaction device officially started and a series of changes began to occur. Some containers emit a large number of bubbles when heated by an alcohol lamp, while others are gradually forming transparent crystals. He stood in front of the experimental table, carefully examining each reaction vessel and scanning it one by one to ensure that there were no problems with heating, distillation, condensation, filtration, purification, extraction, reheating, etc. His gaze fell to the end. That is a horn tube connected to the end of a condenser tube, slowly generating droplets of gray-black liquid, which drip into the conical flask below. This is a complete set of reaction devices for purifying wizard blood, and he is currently trying to extract wizard blood that may exist in the blood of the enchanting fish or something similar to wizard blood. If purification is successful, it can prove that witches like Phil and demonized creatures like the enchanting fish have commonalities, and the blood of wizards may be the source of all supernatural magical powers. If the purification fails, it indicates that the appearance of the enchanting fish has mutated, and there may be deeper reasons for its effect on enhancing the human body after use. By understanding this reason, he may find a way to directly enhance the human body without relying on the enchanting fish. At present it is unclear when the Countess's test against him will begin, and specifically what it will be, but it is definitely not simple. If lucky, finding a method that can enhance the human body without the help of the enchanting fish before the test begins and successfully applying it to one's own practice should still be helpful in passing the test. He pondered, his gaze refocused on the final horn tube of the reaction device, watching the gray-black liquid drip by drip from the horn tube. It has to be said that the speed of finished product generation is extremely slow, perhaps because the blood of the enchanting fish and Feyre are somewhat different, and the overall efficiency is only less than 1/3 of the original. He estimated that it would take a while for him to fully react, so he decided to sit down next to him. He wasn't idle either, reaching out to take 2 books and flipping through them. Both books are not small in size, each measuring over 30 centimeters square and 4 to 5 centimeters thick, with strange words written on the cover. These are 2 language learning books, one is Amma's language and the other is Uruk language. These are the 2 latest languages he has learned after learning the Funarenza language for normal communication. Compared to Vernarenza, Amma's language is a more widely used language, used not only in the kingdom of Vernarenza where Blackstone Castle is located, but also in many neighboring and distant countries. Wuluk language, on the other hand, is a niche language spoken by a small number of people, usually veteran nobles and legendary wizards, serving as a passport to enter certain specific circles. At present, there is not much need for learning these 2 languages, but he considers that he will definitely not stay at Blackstone Castle for a long time in the future. In order to learn more about, explore, and study this mysterious world, he will definitely leave for a distant place. In that case, it is still necessary to learn more languages. After all, the aphasia period that he had just experienced before was quite uncomfortable and impressive. Speaking of which, after learning the Funarenza language, the difficulty of learning the Amma's and Uruk languages has been greatly reduced. In his studies, he discovered that there are many similarities among the 3 languages. For example, the spelling and pronunciation of Alex exist in all three languages, but with different definitions. In the Flemish language, it means black stone, and it is also the origin of the name Blackstone Castle. The living room wall of the main castle is deeply engraved with the words Alex. In the language of Almas, Arax means terror, but in the language of Uruk, it becomes a respectable gentleman. It's very interesting. Leahy thought to himself, constantly translating two books to quickly memorize and learn. Time passed, and after flipping through dozens of pages in each of the two books, Leahy rubbed his slightly swollen temples and stood up. He glanced at the nearby reaction device and found that he had finally reached the end. The conical flask that receives the final product has already received nearly 1/3 of the capacity of gray-black liquid, and the horn tube above no longer drips. The generation rate is quite good, even higher than the average value. Leahy muttered to himself, in this case, just purify it and you can conduct a simple comparative experiment with wizard's blood. Put away two language books, Leahy picked up a conical flask and prepared to operate. At this moment, with a creaking sound, the door of the stone house opened and two figures walked in. Leahy looked over and saw that it was Fayer and Weyer. Why are you two here? I'm quite busy today and don't have time to play with you. Before the words could be finished, another figure followed in from behind. It's Five-Sister Hill. Compared to Fayer and Weyer, Hill, who is about the same age as him, is even a rare guest in the stone house and rarely sees each other actively visiting, which makes Leahy couldn't help but raise his eyebrows lightly. But the surprise was not over yet, and the third sister Mengna Shah and the second sister Lunis also walked in. This can be considered a rare guest, than Hill. In his memory, the other two were built from a stone house and never visited before. And in this way, all 6 sisters, except for their elder sister Fiona, were gathered together in his stone house. Watching this scene, Leahy suddenly understood something. Seeking support. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Are You Witchhunters? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Are You Witchhunters? Leahy looked around the 5 sisters and chuckled lightly. Let me guess. You came together, probably to persuade me to apologize to the Count. The 5 sisters nodded collectively without any concealment. Perhaps you're not wrong, but the Count must be angry, the consequences are very serious. We are all quite scared, and you should also be afraid. You don't really want to try the test that the Count said, do you? What if it completely angers the Count? We think it's better for you to apologize to her, the 5 sisters advised with various tongues. Leahy chuckled lightly and said, you do make sense, but my thoughts are also very firm and won't change. But what if the Count gets completely angry, Leahy? Although we haven't seen the Count get completely angry before, we can guess it must be very, very scary. Weyer timidly said, why don't you go and apologize to the Countess? If you do, I promise I won't cause trouble no matter what you do in the future, and I promise Fayer won't cause trouble either. This has nothing to do with causing trouble or not. But persuasion continued, but Leahy's ideas remained unwavering. After an unknown amount of time, Leahy suddenly thought of something. He turned his head and looked out the window at the dark sky, slowly making a sound. Is it dinner time? Why hasn't there been any activity today? As soon as Leahy spoke, the 5 sisters were all slightly stunned. They stopped persuading and suddenly realized that there was indeed something strange. The dinner time at Blackstone Castle has always been extremely regular and has never changed. As usual, at this time, there should be a maid to notify everyone to go to the restaurant and prepare for dinner. If the maid can't call, the elder sister Fiona will personally come to invite, then the situation will be much more serious. But today, there are no maids, no big sister Fiona, nothing. Second sister Luna frowned and thought for a moment before saying, Mengna Shah, you can come with me to take a look. Maybe something happened at the restaurant. Okay. The third sister Mengnasha, who was named, didn't hesitate and followed the second sister Lunis out. And then never came back again. More than 10 minutes later, 5 Sister Hill couldn't help but wait. She, who was already impatient, stomped her feet and said, "What's going on? If something happens, second sister and third sister need to come back and say something. What's the point of letting us wait? Forget it, I'll go and see. You guys wait here, I'll come back later and tell you about the situation." After speaking, I turned around and walked out. He originally wanted to open his mouth and say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He just looked outside at the increasingly dark night, frowning slightly and feeling lost in thought. According to usual practice, dinner time has already passed and dinner has not yet started today, which is very unusual and requires caution. But then again, this is Blackstone Castle, guarded by a powerful countess. What accidents can happen in this Blackstone Castle? Doubting, time continued to pass, and more than 10 minutes passed. Even though Hill came back shortly after speaking, he didn't see any sign of him coming back, and Fayer and Weyer couldn't wait any longer. Weyer looked at He and whispered, "He. Why don't we go and take another look with Fayer?" Before He could answer, Fayer walked towards the door and said, "Let's go, Weyer, let's go take a look together." He furrowed his eyebrows deeply and called out to the two of them, "Wait a moment." "What's wrong?" Violet asked. "What's up?" Fayer looked over in confusion. He looked out at the inky night and slowly spoke out, making a judgment. "There's something wrong with the situation." "What's wrong?" "It's too quiet outside, there may be danger." "But isn't this inside the castle?" Violet exclaimed in surprise. "Yeah, we're not easy to deal with in the castle." "What's the danger?" Fayer said, "Besides, isn't there still an earl?" "What danger can happen in front of the earl?" "It used to be, but now it's hard to say," he said seriously, with some speculations in his mind. "I'm going out to take a look, you two follow me. Remember to follow me closely and not be more than 2 meters away from me." "Okay," Violet nodded obediently. "Are you serious?" "All right." Fayer also made a promise, looking at Leahy's extremely serious expression and not daring to be mischievous. Leahy took a deep breath, his gaze fixed, and took a step towards the side. He took out the magic-modified spell rifle, Ambition, and filled the magazine with special bullets containing the blood of the wizard. Afterwards, he took out a bunch of unknown small items from the metal cabinet, put them in various pockets of his clothes, prepared them, waved his hand, and led Weyer and Fayer to open the door and walk out. Outside the door, the night is intense. The Blackstone Castle, covered in darkness, is a dead silence. There is no light, no sound. If we ignore the light emanating from the stone house behind us, the entire Blackstone Castle is like a dead castle, like a zombie beast nestled on the earth. The windows of every room in the castle were pitch black, and the Countess was gone. Lunis, Monasha, Hill, and many other maids who had left the castle before were nowhere to be found, as if they had never existed before. Leahy pursed his mouth. Watching this scene, Weyer had already grabbed Leahy's hem in fear. Fayer poured a little better, perhaps the little brain had not yet reacted, just frowned and asked, "What's wrong with this? It's so empty, so black. Why are everyone missing? There's a possibility." "What's possible?" Weyer and Fayer asked. "Perhaps the test that the Count told me has already begun." Ah! Bang! At the next moment, a loud noise suddenly came from the gate of the castle. Leahy, Weyer, and Fayer all looked towards the direction of the castle gate, and saw that the sturdy castle gate seemed to be being violently impacted, accompanied by continuous and intense sounds, beginning to shake and crumble. For a moment, with a loud thud, the entire gate fell fiercely towards the castle, slamming heavily on the ground and splashing large amounts of dust. Then, a dense crowd carried torches through the dust and rushed into the castle, with hundreds of people, quite oppressive. He squinted his eyes and noticed that the crowd was quite mixed, with about 50 soldiers wearing leather armor and wielding weapons. Through the badges on the opponent's leather armor, he recognized them as personal soldiers of a baron's estate next to Blackstone Castle. The remaining people should be farmers who have gathered temporarily, basically without formal weapons, mostly holding agricultural tools such as shovels and wooden forks. It may seem a bit ridiculous, but when a group of such people look at them with extremely hostile eyes, it's not ridiculous anymore. It's enough to scare many people. He was not intimidated, his brain was spinning rapidly. What was the purpose of these people coming? Is it related to the Countess's test? Or is it purely coincidental? Generally speaking, besides the people in Blackstone Castle who fear the Countess, the people in the surrounding territories of Blackstone Castle are more afraid of the Countess. If it weren't for some leverage, he wouldn't believe these people daring to break through the door and break in like this. Thinking about it, Leahy's gaze fell on a middle-aged man in the center of the crowd, who was being guarded by several soldiers. The other party was wearing a light blue long shirt, holding a metal square box in their hand. Their gaze looked with a hint of fanaticism and anger, like a group of people commanding. Seeking support, seeking recommendations, seeking comments. Thank you all. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. He seems not afraid of God punishing stones. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. He seems not afraid of God punishing stones. What are you doing here? Violet asked first, her voice trembling slightly. Obviously, for a 9-year-old girl, the scene was still a bit scary. Do you dare to break into the castle? Aren't you afraid of being punished? Feyre had more courage and frowned in front of hundreds of people, saying, if you dare to do anything bad, if you dare to harm Weyr and Leahy, I won't spare you. As she spoke, flames slowly sprouted from Feyre's hands, spreading towards her arms, as if she was ready to attack with magical power at any moment. Everyone looked visibly intimidated and couldn't help but take a few steps back. But the man in blue in the crowd did not retreat. He sneered and stood still, opening the metal square box in his hand. At the next moment, an egg-sized, deep purple crystal appeared. The flames in Feyre's arms flickered unsteadily for a few moments and suddenly extinguished. Feyre couldn't help but be taken aback. The next moment, her small face stiffened, revealing a painful expression, and her body collapsed to the ground. Weyr was the same, trembling and falling to the ground. Don't be afraid, everyone. We have a divine punishment stone, and evil forces cannot resist. Witches and wizards who commit evil deeds will lose their magic and become like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. The man in blue shouted, and the crowd regained their confidence and stepped forward. But soon everyone discovered something strange, and saw Leahy standing in place with no influence from the divine punishment stone in his appearance. Lord Oz, there's still a male wizard who hasn't fallen. Don't be afraid, he's just forcefully supporting us. Blue-clad man Oz shouted loudly, no wizard can be immune to the god's stone. Go up and kill him, kill those 2 little witches, kill all the evil lives in this castle, complete the task assigned to us by Baron Murphy, and the Baron will reward us all. Yes. The crowd nodded vigorously and pressed forward with weapons in hand. Leahy squinted at everything and suddenly spoke out, may I ask, what exactly is going on? Ha, evil wizard, don't you understand yet? You and your companions, the days of evil have come to an end. Over the years, Baron Murphy and his soldiers and people have had enough of your existence. The light will surely defeat evil, and today is how you will suffer. Oz roared. After roaring, he watched as the group still showed fear towards the standing Leahy. He hesitated to get too close, took a deep breath, and turned his head to command a healthy soldier beside him, Buno, go up and kill him. I apologize to the Baron for you. But, sir. The soldier named was not foolish. Sir, this evil male wizard really doesn't seem to be influenced by the divine punishment stone. Has the divine punishment stone failed? Impossible. The divine punishment stone cannot be invalidated. This male wizard is just a bit stronger, but no matter what, under the influence of the divine punishment stone, he will definitely not be able to release any spells. Don't be afraid of him, go up and kill him, and I will ask the Baron to waive your taxes for 10 years. Well. Good. The soldier gritted his teeth and strode forward, wielding a long sword to strike fiercely at Li He. Li He narrowed his eyes into a slit and muttered to himself, "So, are you hunting witches? Are you serious? Go to hell, wizard." The soldier named Buno widened his eyes and had already approached. His long sword swung fiercely at Li He from top to bottom. Li He looked at the soldier and the long sword that had fallen, without any fear on his face. He just exhaled, "Okay. Damn it." The long sword almost reached his head. Bang! At the next moment, Li He's demonic modified rifle, Ambition, rang out. A firelight burst from the muzzle, and the bullet shot out at high speed, hitting the soldier's body. Puff! A large cloud of blood mist burst out. The soldier fell to the ground in an instant. Everyone took a deep breath of air. Li He squinted his eyes and looked at everyone, retreating in unison. Oz's face also turned slightly pale, obviously not expecting this change, which completely exceeded his expectations. Before coming, Baron Murphy confidently told him that as long as he came with the divine punishment stone, he would definitely be able to control all the wizards. But as of now, there is no chance to back out and we can only grit our teeth. He took a deep breath and cheered up his morale loudly, "Don't be afraid, everyone. This male wizard was already the last to resist just now. He must have used his strange wand to kill people. But the wand can only be used once to kill people. Now his wand is also ineffective, kill him." No one came forward. Oz had no choice but to call out again, "Muru, kill this wizard for me. I will ask the Baron to waive all your taxes, and I will no longer pursue your brother for drinking and killing people." "Okay." A soldier with a face full of flesh gritted his teeth, carrying a battle axe and cutting through the crowd towards Li He. Bang! There was another gunshot, and before the other person could completely leave the crowd, a blood mist burst out of their body and they fell to the ground. The bullets fired by Ambition had not yet been transformed into rolling bullets, and their penetration was too strong. After penetrating the opponent's body, they also shot into the body of another, unlucky, soldier next to them. So, 2 people fell down in an instant. The crowd was in chaos, and they had not received strict training before. Coupled with the fear of wizards from the bottom of their hearts, they suffered 2 consecutive blows and were on the brink of collapse. Oz noticed this and stared at Li He intently, unable to understand why Li He, the wizard, was not influenced by the divine punishment stone. Baron Murphy is absolutely right that the divine punishment stone can make all wizards lose their power, and all wizards will be affected unless that person is not a wizard. But how could it not be a wizard? Oz stared at Li He, almost spewing out flames, and could only try to convince himself in his heart that the male wizard must be too powerful, so he was less affected by the divine punishment stone. But no matter what, this male wizard killed 2. No, he killed 3 people. An unaffected evil wizard should also consume his evil power, and the other party must not harm anyone anymore. So watching the crowd almost disperse, Oz unleashed his strength, grabbing the divine punishment stone with one hand and pulling out the long sword from the soldier beside him with the other. He personally rushed out of the crowd and charged towards Li He. "Follow me to kill this evil wizard. He must have no magic left." Bang! The gunfire rang out for the 3rd time. During the charge, Oz's body shook violently, and a large cloud of blood mist burst out from his heart. He felt his entire body strength quickly dissipate, and his legs became weak, unable to resist kneeling on the ground. The long sword landed, and the divine punishment stone in his hand rolled down. In intense pain, Oz closed his eyes. The scene remained silent, and everyone was frightened. Leahy bent down and picked up the so-called divine punishment stone, holding ambition towards the crowd, looking at the soldiers and farmers with fear on their faces. With a sneer full of evil, he asked, "Guess who will die next?" This sentence is like the last straw that crushes a camel. Wow! Everyone in the field instantly collapsed, and the team besieging Blackstone Castle and hunting wizards dispersed in a panic. Hundreds of people rushed frantically towards the castle gate, pushing and pushing each other, creating chaos. Leahy couldn't help but shake his head and commented in his heart, "A rabble." Glancing over the corpse left on the ground, there was not much reaction, and then his gaze fell on the divine punishment stone in his hand. Collect, comment, and support. Thank you all. End of this chapter. Chapter 9, I Want an Answer. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9, I Want an Answer. Leahy is very interested in the divine punishment stone. What is the principle that a stone can actually limit the power of Weir and Feyre through space? If the power of all wizards can be limited by a mineral, it is difficult to believe how well wizards in this world can develop. Is it really like this? He carefully scrutinized the divine punishment stone a few times, and with the help of the light of the torch that fell to the ground, he saw that the interior of the divine punishment stone was not a complete piece, and vaguely seemed to be sealed with a worm inside. Yes, a bug, a multi-legged bug resembling a centipede. The insect is black in color and motionless inside the divine punishment stone. It is unclear whether it has died or fallen asleep. The insect's back is also intricately carved with strange silver patterns. So, this divine punishment stone is not a natural mineral, but a man-made creation. Leahy couldn't help but blink. Considering the strange insects inside and the strange patterns on the insects, the so-called divine punishment stone is likely created by wizards. That is to say, this is a prop used by wizards to attack other wizards, but for some reason it fell into the hands of a noble baron. However, if he had guessed correctly before, all of this would have made sense. After a quick thought in his mind, Leahy found the metal square box that Oz had discarded on the ground and put the divine punishment stone inside. As the divine punishment stone was inserted, Weir and Feyre stood up slowly with a frown, as if a stone was being pushed away from their bodies. "Leahy, did you drive those people away?" After standing up, Feyre called out first. Leahy nodded lightly. But. Violet spoke up at this moment, with a completely incomprehensible expression on her face. But why did this happen? Why did these people break into the castle? Stupid Weir, didn't they just say that Baron Murphy sent them? I heard it, but why did Baron Murphy send them? Why didn't he send them before? And why didn't the Count appear? He didn't even show up when he saw us being bullied. Just now, Leahy, you said the Earl's test has begun, so what's going on? Violet asked repeatedly, obviously very puzzled. Leahy let out a breath and explained, why didn't Baron Murphy send people before, but now he does. It's obvious that he didn't have a so-called divine punishment stone before, but now he does. As for who gave him the divine punishment stone, I have a guess. Who? Weir and Feyre asked. There is a 60% chance that the Count gave it to him, Leahy said seriously. All of this may be the Count's test. After a pause, Leahy looked at Weir and Feyre and continued, all of this should have been against me. Speaking of which, he should have left with Hill just now. That might have been taken away by the Count, leaving only me to be tested, but it should be too late now. Really? Weir and Feyre looked at each other, feeling a bit uncomfortable with Leahy's words for a moment. Leahy chuckled lightly and said, whether it's true or false, just verify it and you'll know. As I said before, practice is the key to understanding. Here, guessing out of thin air is not the answer. As he spoke, Li He held on to his ambition and walked towards the outside of the castle. "Where are you going?" Violet asked. "Of course, I'm going to the place where I can find the answer." "I'm planning to visit Baron Murphy who sent someone over," Li He said. Fayer and Weyer exchanged a glance, realizing that there was no other choice, and quickly chased after Li He. Levexi Town, located on the edge of the town in a magnificent house. Baron Murphy paced anxiously in the living room with numerous candles lit. Dada, dada. As I paced, I occasionally looked out the door, anxiously hoping for something. Not back yet. Is it so slow? What a bunch of trash. If I had known, I would have personally taken action. Baron Murphy couldn't help but say, glancing at the armor and knight's sword hanging on the wall. That is the equipment he used 20 years ago when he fought for the kingdom. With one armor and one sword, he continuously dealt heavy blows to 13 heavily armored warriors and became famous in one battle. He was directly conferred the title of Baron. However, 20 years have passed and his body is no longer as strong as before. He, who was once strong, has now become bloated due to the indulgence of long years. Under the obstruction of his plump belly, he lowered his head and couldn't even see his own feet. His movements were quite slow, not to mention resuming the battle, it was even difficult to mount a horse. However, in his opinion, this is not a big deal. As long as he is given some time to prepare, he can quickly recover to the once fierce and trembling Iron Sword Murphy. Thinking of this, I realized that the dispatched person had not returned yet, and couldn't help but curse again. Waste, so slow has no result, really waste. At this moment, there was a loud bang outside the door. Baron Murphy, instinctively looking towards the door. With a creaking sound, the door opened and 3 people entered. A 14-year-old boy and 2 young girls who are only 8 or 9 years old. Baron Murphy couldn't help but be taken aback for a moment. He didn't react for a moment and frowned as he looked at the 3 of them. He asked in a muffled voice, "Who are you? Whose child in town?" Li He listened to Baron Murphy's words and tugged at the corner of his mouth, saying calmly, "We are not from town. Let me introduce ourselves. We come from Blackstone Castle." Baron Murphy was originally still puzzled, but upon hearing Li He's words, his expression instantly froze on his face, and he felt a chill in his blood. He carefully looked at Li He and the 3 of them, and his heart became even colder. Li He and his 3 companions do not seem like children from the town. Just wearing them does not make them feel like they are. In this world, commoners can only wear dark clothes such as gray and black. Li He's blue robe, Fayer's red robe, and Weyer's white robe are all colors, styles, and materials that only nobles can enjoy. Even commoners cannot afford to wear them. Besides, the children in the town dare not intrude upon him casually. Speaking of which, Li He and his 3 companions, as members of Blackstone Castle, being able to appear in front of him can already explain many things. The person I sent. Ozta. Baron Murphy swallowed his saliva and asked aloud. He's dead, Li He replied succinctly. Baron Murphy's body trembled, and although he had already guessed, he still couldn't believe the answer. Looking at Li He, a strong sense of danger enveloped his entire body. In Baron Murphy's view, since the 3 of them came from Blackstone Castle, they must all be wizards. Although they don't know what special abilities they have, they are enough to kill him. Baron Murphy couldn't help but shout out for someone to protect him. But just as I was about to open my mouth and speak, I realized something and stopped forcefully. Do you want to shout someone? Li He asked out loud. Murphy opened her mouth and looked at Li Hachang, exhaling, I guess they've all been solved, right? If they hadn't been solved, you wouldn't have come in so easily. I can understand it this way. So, the next thing is to start killing me. Murphy said, her gaze unable to resist looking at the armor and knight sword hanging on the wall, somewhat unwilling, and she shook her head secretly in her heart. Hanging too high, with his current obese body, he can't even jump up to reach it. It's hard to have a chance to resist. Is this the punishment for his indulgence over the past 20 years? At this moment, Leahy spoke out, "Actually, I'm not here to kill you, I just want to find an answer. If you're willing to cooperate and tell me this answer, then maybe you can continue to live." The answer. Baron Murphy, who was somewhat desperate, listened to Leahy's words and was slightly taken aback. After a moment, a glimmer of hope reignited in his heart, but more importantly, he was still skeptical. Collect, comment, and support. It would be even better to have some recommended tickets or monthly tickets. Thank you all. End of this chapter. Where is your daughter in chapter 10? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Where is your daughter in chapter 10? In Baron Murphy's view, wizards who come out of Blackstone Castle are definitely not good people, even at a very young age. Maybe the younger you are, the more vicious you become. Furthermore, wizards are adept at change, and Leahy in front of him may only appear to be 14 or 15 years old, but it is possible that he is a guy in his 40s or 50s. What answer do you want? Baron Murphy didn't let his guard down and frowned at Leahy, asking aloud. Leahy took a step and walked to the nearby chair with Weyer and Fayer. He sat down directly and looked at Baron Murphy, saying, "The answer I want is very simple. That's to confirm whether the Countess of Blood asked you to do these things to attack Blackstone Castle." Ah. Baron Murphy paused for a moment and couldn't help but sneer, how could that be? Isn't the bloody Countess the powerful witch of your Blackstone Castle? I sent someone to Blackstone Castle to eliminate her and everything related to her. How could it be that she asked me to do it? She's not stupid, and neither am I. Upon hearing these words, both Fayer and Weyer next to them showed a, as expected, expression. Leahy said that all of this was led by the Countess of Blood, and the two of them were full of surprise and doubt. Now that he heard Baron Murphy's words, he suddenly felt that it should have nothing to do with the Countess. As for why the Countess disappeared and why she did not appear after being attacked at Blackstone Castle, it may be because she was angry with Leahy and took Fiona and a few others on a long journey. Weyer and Fayer made guesses in their hearts. Leahy didn't take this seriously. After listening to Baron Murphy's words, he didn't refute them and lightly nodded, saying, "Okay, I'll ask a different question." "Mr. Murphy," Leahy asked seriously, "why are you attacking Blackstone Castle? Why not attack?" Baron Murphy retorted confidently, "I've had enough of enslaving around Blackstone Castle for so many years. I've long wanted to level it down." "Really? But every time Blackstone Castle collects taxes and supplies, why do you submit them the most actively?" "That's just a cover-up of my true inner thoughts." "Okay. So, may I ask, why did you endure until now when you've been wanting to level the Blackstone Castle?" "That's not because I haven't received the Divine Punishment Stone. Without the Divine Punishment Stone, mortals can't resist wizards at all, they're just a group of lambs waiting to be slaughtered. So, as soon as you received the Divine Punishment Stone, you couldn't wait to launch an attack, right?" "Yes, I can't wait any longer," said Baron Murphy as his eyes began to turn slightly red, showing some excitement. "So?" Leahy squinted at Baron Murphy and asked, "How did you get the Divine Punishment Stone? In theory, this precious thing wouldn't even appear here in seclusion, would it? Even the royal capital of Renza doesn't have many talents. That's all thanks to my beautiful daughter." Baron Murphy couldn't help but show a hint of favor on his face. "She married a nobleman in the capital and got such a precious Divine Punishment Stone. Speaking of which, even if you kill me, it doesn't matter." Baron Murphy's words became a bit more forceful, staring at Leahy and saying, "My daughter married a nobleman with great power. If you kill me, she will definitely find a way to avenge me." Leahy was not angry about this, just nodded lightly and said in a daze, "So, I understand. However, I still have one last doubt left." "What?" "When did you, Baron Murphy, have a daughter?" "Ah. Of course I am. Baron Murphy paused for a moment and was about to answer with some amusement, but as soon as he spoke, his expression suddenly stiffened. The tongue seems to curl up, and words become hesitant. Turn your eyes, think hard, and search for memories in your brain. But I have gained nothing in my memory. He found that his memory of his daughter was completely blank. Baron Murphy's breathing began to become rapid, his face muscles twitched, his eyes widened, and his hands gradually became helpless. I used to be responsible for the collection of castles and have learned about you as an activist. As far as I know, you don't have a daughter at all. Leahy stared at Baron Murphy's panicked eyes and kept asking, if you really do, then I want to ask. What is your daughter's name? How old is she this year? Which woman did you give birth to? What color does she like, what clothes does she like to wear, and what things does she like to do? When did she get married? When did she give you the divine punishment stone? What was the last sentence she said to you? Answer me. Baron Murphy felt as if thunderbolts were exploding above his head, deafening, his brain in chaos, and he could hardly stand still. Faced with Leahy's question, he couldn't answer it at all. He suddenly realized that he didn't seem to have a daughter, he never had one. But not long ago, he still believed that there was something so real and so certain. What's going on? Exactly. He felt his heart being pinched by one hand, his whole body couldn't help but tremble, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of fear. Tears flowed uncontrollably, and his face became moist. He reached out and wiped it, only to find that the color was blood red. He was shedding blood and tears. Crimson blood flowed continuously from Baron Murphy's eyes and quickly dyed half of his body red. Leahy watched the changes of Baron Murphy and slowly got up. Weir, somewhat afraid, grabbed Leahy's arm. Fayer showed a curious gaze, somewhat eager to step forward and figure out what was wrong with Baron Murphy. But before she could approach, Baron Murphy let out a wow sound, knelt down on his upper body, propped his hands on the ground, and vomited wildly. Thick yellow-green liquid, vomited out in large clumps, pulling the sticky thread to the ground. Looking at it, the light green liquid contains many black particles that are the size of rice grains and wriggling. It's unclear whether they are insects or something. Wow, wow. Baron Murphy vomited continuously. A few minutes later, it seemed like almost all the internal organs were about to be vomited out before slowly stopping. Leahy still stared calmly, and Weir's expression was slightly strange, not sure why Baron Murphy suddenly felt like this. Fayer looked at the vomit in front of Baron Murphy and couldn't help but frown in disgust. Did this chubby guy eat his stomach? It's so disgusting. Ha ha ha. Baron Murphy knelt on the ground, his head lowered, saliva dripping from the corners of his mouth, and a hoarse voice came from deep in his throat. He ignored Fayer, but turned to Leahy, my daughter. Okay. I remember. I really don't have a daughter. I have never had a daughter. Actually, I don't have any offspring. Because 20 years ago, I suffered serious injuries on the battlefield. So, every time Blackstone Castle collects taxes and items, I am very proactive in turning them in, just to win your favor. I hope that one day, I can use a wizard's method to obtain an heir. In a sense, I seem to have succeeded. At least just now, I really felt like I had a beautiful daughter, but you broke this illusion. You're amazing. Just now, I didn't even know I didn't have a daughter, but you knew. But don't you think you know too much? It's not good, it's not good. You must know everything, but do you know, will you die today? Baron Murphy suddenly lifted his head, revealing a terrifying expression. Add another chapter, thank you for your support. The other 2 chapters, one at 11 p.m. and the other at 6 p.m., will be updated normally. So, it's 3 shifts today. I hope everyone can continue to support me, and the author Junsun23 will have even greater motivation to code. Thank you. End of this chapter.